Hey guys, John here from Bring the SEO. In today's short presentation, I've titled this one, Learning to Say No as an SEO Consultant. A couple of quick points here before we get into this. For most of us working in the SEO space, it would be fair to say that we're all trying to do good work. We're working with good intentions. And I've included just a few key points here that are fairly typical for most of us. Firstly, we want to ensure our clients are happy with the services we provide. Pretty obvious. We want great testimonials and feedback that strengthens our brand. Next, we want to build a strong reputation and have clients send us referrals. That's of course a good thing. And lastly, we don't want to let our clients down. Instead, we want to do everything we can to help them. And again, these are, fairly safe assumptions. We all want to do the right thing by our clients. But there's a problem. Those good intentions can often go bad. And this is where you find yourself. You've got projects that are out of control, each with their own custom requirements. You suddenly find yourself time poor with constant never-ending deadlines. You're dealing with frustrated, demanding clients, constantly wanting updates. And lastly, you find yourself in a position where the workload increases whilst the revenue and profits plummet. So what causes this? The answer is very simple. You keep saying yes. Let me give you a few examples here. We're looking for someone to build us a new website. Can you help? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. We can take a look at it. We're looking to have an app developed. Is this something you do? It's not really anything we normally do, but we can take a look at it for you. Sure. Can you provide ongoing web maintenance and support? Yeah, no, not a problem at all. We can do that. And lastly, there seems to be a problem with the website. Can you take a quick look at it? Okay, sure, no problem. Now, of course, I think you can see where I'm going with this, right? Caring too much puts us in a position where we almost feel obligated in many ways to say yes. And this introduces all sorts of problems. But the biggest problem of all is service debt. Service debt is very comparable to financial debt in that slowly but surely you find yourself accumulating this debt to the point where no matter how hard you work, you're unable to reduce that debt. And as you can see on screen, each and every time you say yes, or you agree to something that's way outside of scope, that debt accumulates. And you end up with this gap between your actual capacity and resources, that being, of course, your staffing, time, budget, and everything else. You end up with this huge gap where, again, no matter how hard you work, you're unable to reduce that debt. And this, of course, leads to stress and overwhelm and anxiety and burnout and everything else. So why does this happen? There's a few key points here that I'll run through that are fairly typical that I've experienced myself personally, but it's also, these are trends and patterns that I've seen working with hundreds of SEO consultants over the last 10 years. Firstly, the inability to resist the temptation of more money. And this was a discussion that came up recently in the group. Hey, John, someone's waving, $10,000 under my nose. Should I take the money? This looks like a really great project. And my response to that was absolutely not, because it was way outside the scope of his service offering. And it's this temptation of money that is probably one of the largest contributing factors that allows SEO consultants to be pulled in several different directions at once. And when that happens, you end up, of course, with that service debt that I just spoke of, where no matter how hard you work, the amount of stress and anxiety and overwhelm and everything else becomes too much. The next point I've got here is fear of letting the client down or losing them completely. And this is based upon probably scarcity to some extent, and also a sense of obligation. And this is fairly typical for many SEO consultants. Hey, this is a great client. They've been working with me for years. I don't want to disappoint them by saying no. Well, of course, that is a huge problem. Impulsive reaction based upon inexperience and emotion. And this is something that I used to find myself doing all the time. I'd be on the phone to someone. What's that? You need help with Facebook ads? Yeah, sure. We can take a look at it. No problems. Okay, bye. Hang up the phone and then think to yourself, why on earth did I agree to that? Next point I've got here is belief that by doing more means greater opportunities and more profit. Well, there's two things to unpack here. Firstly, you need to recognize and understand that yes, everything is an opportunity, and that's the exact problem because everything is an opportunity. And of course, opportunities can also mean distractions, and the two typically go hand in hand. And this is where it's incredibly important that you stay in your lane. And the second point here is more profit. Well, taking on projects or ad hoc requests that are outside your service offering or outside the scope of project can often mean that those profits are eroded simply because there's steep learning curves and you have to hire additional resources, staff, perhaps training, more software, more time, whatever that might be. And lastly, uncertainty around when the next client might come on board. And this ties in with weak sales and marketing. Of course, if you're getting leads inconsistently and you don't know when the next lead's coming in, then you're more likely to say yes, simply because you need the money. So what's the solution? There's a couple of key points here. I'll get to the main one in just a moment, but here's a few that will help you stay on track. Firstly, you need to be clear about what you do, but more importantly, what you don't do. Okay, clients will expect you to be doing everything. And unless you're very clear and firm about, hey, we don't do these things, then you're going to get pulled in all sorts of directions. So you need to be clear about what you do, but more importantly, what you don't do. Next, fix your sales and marketing so you can be selective about who you work with. Okay, this is a completely different conversation in itself, but you need to fix your inbound marketing so you're generating leads on demand. So you position yourself so you have the luxury of being able to say no. Saying no is certainly a lot easier when you know you've got more leads coming through. Next, avoid the temptation to take on projects out of scope simply because the money seems attractive for the reasons I've just said. And lastly, recognize that everything is an opportunity and a distraction. But of course, the biggest and most important rule is learn to say no. And as an example, can you help us manage our Facebook ads campaign? No. Can you please take care of this small task? It should only take you 5 minutes. No. Is there any chance you could review our Google Ads account? No. And, maybe, hey, we want you to do our SEO and social media as well. No. Now, this is a common question I'm asked quite frequently, certainly during coaching calls, but isn't saying no a bad thing? Well, not necessarily. In fact, saying yes can be worse, and I'll give you a couple examples of this. By saying yes, you're actually doing your clients a disservice. If you went to your local butcher and asked him to do your tax return, there's probably a pretty good chance that that's going to turn out to be an absolute mess. Next, saying yes often means the request will take much longer. Again, for obvious reasons, you won't have the skill sets or the resources in place that another agency might have that perhaps might specialize in that area. Now, saying yes means having to invest in additional resources. Whether it be training, staff, more time, more money, whatever that might be. And that, of course, erodes all of that profit that might have attracted you to that request in the first place. And saying yes can lead to poor outcomes and broken relationships. If you're trying to take on something where you don't have those skill sets, then, of course, the outcomes are more likely to be poor, and that's going to, taint the relationship. And lastly, saying yes often means steep learning curves and chaotic processes. If you already have your processes dialed in for your chosen service offering, then that's just going to cause disruptions to those processes, and that's never a good thing. Now, saying no can actually be better. By saying no, you're demonstrating professionalism and care. As an example, I used to get asked to do Google Ads by clients all the time, and I used to just say, listen, that's not what I do. I don't have any experience or expertise in that area. You're best off going and working with ABC agency. That's all they do, and they do it better than anyone else. That is demonstrating firstly professionalism, but it's also demonstrating the fact that I care. Yeah, I could take it on, but it's going to be real messy, and I don't want to waste my time or your money. Go and work with those guys. They'll take care of you. Next, by saying no, you can often get paid by partnering and getting a referral fee. What better way than to make money than by saying no. It's a beautiful thing. By saying no, you're not causing disruption to internal operations. And this revisits a point that I just made. You're protecting your internal operations and all of those streamlined processes that you've built out. And lastly, by saying no, you're freeing up time to say yes to the right projects. And this is tremendously important. The minute you start saying yes to all of these other things, you're just creating noise. And of course, all of that noise prevents you from focusing on the projects that you should be focusing on. So remember, next time you're asked to do something, regardless of whether it might seem like a 5-minute job or it's a $50,000 project, yes, these things are all opportunities, but they're also distractions. You need to protect your team, your staff, your internal operations, because the minute you say yes, you're going to find yourself attacked by the yes monster and getting pulled in several different directions. You've got to say no. Hey, if you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to learn more, head over to bringtheseo.com. We provide business development training for SEO consultants wanting to improve their processes, increase profits, and scale to $100,000 a month or more without all the stress and overwhelm.